For my UK viewers, now is the pantomime season. Have you been to one this year? I seem to recall one of my favourite pantomimes was Peter Pan. Although my earliest memories are of Aladdin and Widow Twankey. As a father, I was thrilled when my own son's favourite film became Hook. Even as a child, I was aware of much deeper meanings within Peter Pan and Neverland. Of course, differing adaptations have emphasised one or other of these messages. But somehow I feel that now I begin to truly understand the deepest of meanings. I do hope I'm not simply using a story to support my views, like a Baptist preacher in the American South, clinging on to any device to prove my point. Peter Pan first appeared as a character in J.M. Barrie's The Little White Bird of 1902, a novel for adults. In chapters 13 to 18, titled Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens, Peter is a 7-day-old baby and has flown from his nursery to Kensington Gardens in London, where the fairies and birds taught him to fly, rather than a boy who lives in Neverland. J.M. Barrie may have based the character on Peter Pan on his older brother David, who died in an ice skating accident on the day before his 14th birthday. His mother and brother thought of him as forever a boy. Barrie had lost 2 infant siblings, and considering the infant mortality rates were high around this time, experiencing death in early life was an unfortunate but not an altogether uncommon experience. It's this infant mortality that I believe is not only central to understanding Peter Pan, but also its popularity at the time. Indeed, in the late Victorian and Edwardian period, spiritualism was extremely popular, offering comfort to those who had lost loved ones. There is a sense that Neverland is a place that sick children go in their minds, but some never get to come home. After university, Barrie moved to London, where he lived behind Great Ormond Street Hospital, the UK's most famous children's hospital. He became a supporter of the hospital and donated the rights to Peter. This gave the hospital the royalties from every production of the play and publication of the book. I believe something of a red herring, or is it? And I will return to this. But J.M. Barrie never had children and spent much of his time in the late 1890s and early 1900s with Jack and George Davis, who were 4 and 5 years old when he met them. Barrie created these with inspiring the tale, along with Peter, Michael, Nicholas or Nico Llewellyn Davis. Charmed by the boys, he grew close to their mother, Sylvia. Their father, Arthur, was less impressed by Barrie. Barrie began to invite the family to vacation at his estate, where the time he spent playing with the children gave him the idea for Peter Pan's adventure. Barrie's original draft depicts Peter as a villain, kidnapping children from their beds. To die would be an awfully big adventure, says Peter Pan, in one of the novel's most famous lines of ghoulish sentiment, coming from a child. Barrie never described Peter's appearance in detail, even in his novel, leaving it to the imagination of the reader and the interpretation of anyone adapting the character. In the play, Peter's outfit is made of autumn leaves and cobwebs. In the book and the play, he carries a dagger for cutting and a sword for fighting, although in some versions he only has one of the two. Barrie mentions Peter and Wendy in Peter and Wendy that Peter Pan still has his first teeth. His name and playing the flute or panpipe suggests that he's based on the Greek god and mythological character of Pan. Peter is an exaggerated stereotype of a boastful and careless boy. He claims greatness even when such claims are questionable, such as congratulating himself when Wendy reattaches his shadow. In the play and book, Peter symbolises the selfishness of childhood and is portrayed as being forgetful and self-centred. Peter's devoted to his own entertainment and accepting battle scenes, incapable of taking care of himself. He loves like a child, without the thought of the effect of his love has, or what it will mean if he forgets for a while. Peter is nonchalant, devil-may-care attitude, and is fearlessly cocky when it comes to putting himself in danger. Barrie writes that when Peter thought he was going to die on Maruna's rock, he felt scared, yet he felt only one shudder. In the play, the unseen and unnamed narrator ponders what might have been if Peter had stayed with Wendy, so that his crime might have become to live would be an awfully big adventure, but he can never quite get the hang of it. Because Peter Pan is obsessed with being a child forever, he embraces everything childhood entails, one of his favourite hobbies being to go in search of new games. With nothing to structure his life, the boy who will never grow up is also the boy who never grows, period. Peter Pan is described in the book as incredibly forgetful. As such, he can't learn or adapt as well as humans, because his memory is slippery and weak. Peter Pan shows complete disdain for grown-ups, but didn't we all feel this as children? Seeing the adult world as a construct to avoid, and adults the evil characters pushing us into this world. Peter Pan's disdain for grown-ups leads him to turn on his own friends too. When the lost boys begin to show signs of maturing, he kills them. And being a child forever means that he can never fully realise what he's missing, life to the fullest. Instead, he petulantly controls those around him, even using death when he feels he needs to, in order to keep his Neverland intact. But what of Peter's shadow, which acts independently of him? Whilst it seems so obviously Jungian, it probably predates Jung's concept. And I will stretch this credibility by introducing Freud's Oedipus. Yes, I am that Baptist preacher, but humour me. Clearly the shadow is the unknown, and the unknown which sometimes acts independently of us. Peter Pan syndrome is a pop psychology term used to describe an adult who is socially immature. It refers to the never-growing adults who've reached an adult age, but cannot face their adult sensations and responsibilities. The term is a metaphor based on the concept of not growing up and being trapped in childhood. This would include dulled emotions and an inability to truly express our feelings, apathy and procrastination, fear of commitment and responsibility, avoidance of responsibilities, avoidance of accountability and blaming others, difficulties in maternal relationships and seeing future partners as mother figures, distance from fathers and issues with male authority figures, fear of rejection by partners and a desire to make partners dependent. But doesn't this describe us all today? Certainly the characteristics are also close to those of narcissism, which is increasing exponentially. But maybe it's also the general influence of narcissism on behaviour on the general population. What has become clear to me as I analyse contemporary society and events is how all resembles lessons I learnt in a primary school yard. Yes, our politicians, business leaders, members of the elite all seem to be more like primary school children than people we should look up to. We are told that they have our best interests at heart, just as the bullies told us at school, when they're simply pursuing self-interest. But increasingly I'm spotting this somewhat childlike behaviour in acquaintances of my age. How many of them now seem to be reliving their teenage years? I'm happy for them, but find myself unable to adequately interact in their fantasies. Maybe like they see the past as a better time, but I do not feel the need to escape back to it. Captain Hook was only added later as a theatrical device to distance the audience while stagehands changed the scenery. Captain Hook in the original isn't the grumpy pirate, but instead a violent and ruthless seafarer. Captain Hook, whose right hand was cut off in a duel, is Peter Pan's arch-enemy, who leads a group of pirates. Captain Hook's two principal fears are the sight of his own blood, which is supposedly an unnatural colour, and one saltwater crocodile. The crocodile is Captain Hook's nemesis. After Peter Pan cut off Captain Hook's hand in a fight and threw it in the sea, the crocodile swallowed it and got a taste for Hook, so it now seeks to consume him whole. It also swallowed a ticking clock which alerts Hook to its presence. Hook is constantly seeking revenge for his lost hand, refusing to forgive nor move on. Thus Hook is the opposite of Peter, all too aware of time and his own mortality. A juxtaposition of adults' preoccupation with time and aging and a child's conviction that time stands still and life lasts forever. In being the opposite of Peter, Hook is almost the adult conscious. It's a constant reminder that we all need to grow up and accept responsibilities, including the tyranny of time. But more than this, Hook is the rational and the non-magical that we are called to embrace. In fact, in the first theatrical performance of Peter Pan, Barrie asked Hook to be played by Wendy's father. Furthermore, Hook embodies the single-mindedness, greed and cruelty of the adult world, attributes that we are encouraged to embrace. Certainly Barrie's Peter is far from perfect, but compared to Hook, who can blame him for not wanting to grow up? Even the sweet Tinker Bell is jealous and borderline dangerous in Barrie's original. Tinker Bell is a common fairy who is Peter Pan's best friend and is often jealously protective of him. She is the friend who helps him in his escapades. Tinker Bell's malicious actions are usually caused by a jealousy. These lead to the Lost Boys shooting arrows at Wendy and eventually revealing Peter's hideout to Captain Hook, in the hope that Wendy will be captured rather than Peter. When Tinker Bell realises her serious mistake, she risks her own life by drinking the poison Hook has left for Peter. Her extreme loyalty and dedication to Peter are everlasting. But Tinker Bell is fragile and will disappear when you stop believing in her. Just like our childhoods, once we abandon belief, we can no longer experience what we once did. Like Peter, I could fly until the belief was beaten out of me at school. But such beliefs slip away from us, without us ever realising it was gone, until we come to see our memories as dreams. Dreams from a time when dreams and reality seemed as one. Indeed, the whole basis of the paranormal and magical thinking is belief. Like Captain Cook and my school, we're encouraged to abandon these beliefs. But is it not more about the left brain triumphing over the right? Maybe one day we'll return to a more mystical thinking and recognise what we have lost. Peter and the Lost Boys spend their lives in Neverland without a mother or an adult role model. This is why they took Wendy Darling in as their mother in Oedipal fashion. This was a substantial point throughout the book, which can be identified through the theme loving mothers are important to have. When Wendy is captured and tied up by the pirates Smee says, "I'll save you if you promise to be my mother." The pirates also want to be loved by a mother, even though they seem tough and evil. This can also be seen when Wendy, her brothers and the lost boys decide to return home to the Darlings. I mentioned that I would return to the darker rumours on Barrie's interest in young boys. And here is where it develops. The plot of the 1911 prose version of Peter Pan combines a seemingly estual obsession with children and the family romance. One day Peter arrives at the window of the Darlings' family home in London and teaches the children, Wendy, John and Michael, to fly. I recall being aroused as a child at the idea of flying into Wendy's bedroom, without having any real notion of what I might do. And maybe it is this that Barrie plays into by casting Peter and Wendy as father and mother, vague archetypes in an estual Frisian of the unknown. For me, that Wendy would accept me as I was, maybe not made of slugs and snails and poppy ducks' tails, but certainly with missing teeth, grazed knees and worms in my pockets. Accept me and ignore the contents of my pocket simply because I could fly, when I knew that we all could fly with the right encouragement. He takes them away from the ineffectual and fearful father across the ocean to Neverland, a vaguely Caribbean island that's said to materialise their fantasies. The Darling children join the lost boys, abandoned by their parents, to live in a house under the ground and headed by their new play father Peter, with Wendy as their mother. But the Darlings return to London, finding the strength to live in both the world of dreams and realities, ultimately betraying Peter, and he becomes just the subject of bedtime stories for the younger Darlings. And like those times when my dreams and reality were one, there is something of familiarity to these stories. The cycle continues as Peter takes Wendy's daughter Jane to Neverland. Thus the spell is unbroken. Wendy faces Peter's darkest fear, that of change. Thus time moves on without Peter. He's frozen in a narrative, frozen in the weight of what he has lost. On the surface, Neverland is a seemingly innocent place, a magical carefree paradise where kids may be kids forever. But considering the dark theme surrounding Barrie's original version of the book, there's a darker side. Neverland offers fun, but it comes with being trapped in an endless, amnesiac adventure. Neverland offers the boys a chance to avoid responsibility. It taps into the consequences of never growing older, loneliness and loss. But for me, Neverland represents the paranormal and magical thinking that we can enter when we suspend disbelief. It's the Anwin where the Fae tempt us with music to dance. It's somewhere we can go if only we can continue to believe in it. Just as once we all could fly, we suspend belief if we suspend belief in gravity. But there is the Neverland, which contains versions we create of ourselves in social media. But there are also Neverlands that have been created for us by the elites. There are the Neverlands of video games that so many of us dwell in. But there's also the Neverland of the news, education, money, leisure, that we all too often throw ourselves into. Indeed, this is a part of my reflection on how so many my age have failed to grow up and take responsibility. business leaders preoccupied with greed, politicians preoccupied with point scoring, and my acquaintances with their teenage years. Like the very name then, Wendy, we all need to construct a Neverland. The only issue is of gradients. Is it our Neverland constructed to empower us, or one that's been constructed contain us? And like Wendy, we're empowered if we can use belief and dreams to embrace change.